Victoria came out of the room and caught Sophia with her ears placed on the door. Peter and Victoria returned home one evening, their faces twisted with anger and frustration. The moment they stepped through the door, Sophia could sense the storm coming. She tried to keep out of their way, but it was no use. "Sophia!" Peter barked. "Get over here, now." Sophia hurried to the living room, her heart pounding. "Yes, sir." "You useless girl," Victoria spat. "We had a terrible day at work, and now we come home to this mess?" She gestured wildly at the perfectly clean room. I'm sorry," Sophia stammered. But the house is clean, Ma. I cleaned it twice by myself." "Wait a minute. What did you say?" Peter shouted, raising his hand. "Are you trying to call us liars?" Without another word, Peter and Victoria began to beat her. Their frustration from work was taken out on Sophia, who cried out in pain with each blow. She tried to protect herself, but they were relentless. "Please, stop," Sophia begged through her tears. "I'm sorry. Please." But they didn't stop. They hit her until she could barely stand, then shoved her aside as if she were nothing. Sophia lay on the floor, her body throbbing with pain, tears streaming down her face. Victoria looked down at her with disdain. "Get out of our sight. We don't want to see your face." Sophia struggled to her feet and limped to her room. She collapsed onto her thin mattress, her body shaking with sobs. The pain was unbearable, but even worse was the sense of hopelessness that threatened to overwhelm her. "Why is this happening to me?" she whispered to herself. "What did I do to deserve this?" As she laid there, broken and hungry, she knew she couldn't go on like this. The couple refused to feed her that night, leaving her to starve. Her stomach rumbles as she goes to bed broken and hungry. Sophia knew she couldn't endure the torture any longer. The constant beatings, the starvation, and the cruelty had pushed her to her limit. She had to escape. Every night, as she lay in her bed, she thought about how she would get away from Peter and Victoria. Over the next few days, Sophia secretly packed her essentials in a small bag, some food, a bottle of water, the small blanket she had hidden, and a few other necessities. She knew she had to be ready to move quickly when the time came. Finally, one night, she decided it was time. She waited until Peter and Victoria had gone to bed, listening carefully to make sure they were asleep. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Sophia glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m., the perfect time to make her move. She took a deep breath and tiptoed to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. "This is it," she thought. "Finally, I can get away from all this torture." She carefully opened the door, trying to make as little noise as possible. The cool night air greeted her, and she felt a glimmer of hope. She was almost free. But just as she stepped outside, she heard a voice behind her. "Sophia!" Victoria shouted from her room. "Where do you think you're going to?" Sophia froze, her heart racing. She turned around to see Victoria standing in the doorway of her room, her eyes blazing with anger. Sophia was on her knees, pleading desperately with Victoria, who had caught her trying to escape that night. "Please, Victoria," Sophia begged, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run away. Please, forgive me. Victoria glared at her with cold eyes. You ungrateful little wretch, she spat. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Peter joined Victoria, his face twisted with anger. You should be thankful for the roof over your head and the food we give you, he added. But no, you tried to run away. I just can't take it anymore, Sophia said, her voice trembling. The beatings, the starvation. Please, try to understand. Victoria's face twisted upon the surprised response. Understand. Understand, she screamed. You have no idea how good you have it here. Without us, you'd be dead on the streets. Sophia's fear turned into a spark of defiance. I'd rather be on the streets than here with you, she shot back. You're monsters. Peter's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward. What did you say? He growled. You heard me, Sophia said, her voice stronger now. You're monsters. Both of you. Victoria let out a scream of fury and slapped Sophia across the face. How dare you speak to us like that, she shouted. Peter grabbed Sophia by the hair and pulled her to her feet. You'll regret those words, he said, his voice low and menacing. Together, they beat Sophia mercilessly. They rained blows on her, kicking and punching her until she was a bruised and bloody mess on the floor. She tried to protect herself, but their rage was too much. Let this be a lesson to you, Peter hissed as he delivered a final kick to her ribs. Victoria looked down at Sophia with disgust. You're nothing but a worthless piece of trash, she said. They left her there, lying on the floor half dead. Sophia's whole body ached with pain, and she could barely move. But she forced herself to crawl to her room, tears mixing with the blood on her face. I should have known better, she whispered to herself. I should have thought this was a bad idea. As she lay on the cold floor of her room, she blamed herself for trying to escape in the first place. The beating had been worse than anything she had experienced before, and she felt utterly defeated. I'll never get out of here, she thought, despair washing over her. They'll never let me go. Sophia cried herself to sleep that night, as the pain her body felt was as if she was burning in hell. One Saturday morning, Victoria had fallen slightly sick. Her usual fiery attitude was dulled by the illness, and she lay on the couch moaning. Sophia, come here, she called weakly. You need to take care of me today. Sophia approached cautiously. What do you need, ma'am? She asked, keeping her tone neutral. Victoria handed her some money. Go to the pharmacy and get my medication, she ordered. And don't you dare be late. Yes, Victoria, Sophia replied, taking the money and heading out the door. As she walked to the pharmacy, a plan began to form in her mind. She was desperate to escape, and this might be her only chance. At the pharmacy, she bought the required medication. Her eyes caught a small box of sleeping tablets on the shelf behind the counter. After a moment of hesitation, she asked for the sleeping tablets too. The pharmacist handed them to her without question, and she paid for everything with the money Victoria had given her. Returning home, Sophia found Victoria still lying on the couch. Here are your medications, Victoria, she said, handing her the medication. Victoria swallowed the pills and lay back down. Make sure dinner is ready on time, she muttered. Yes, Victoria, Sophia said, her heart pounding. She went to the kitchen and began preparing dinner, her hands shaking slightly. As she cooked, she crushed the sleeping tablets into a fine powder and mixed them into the food. This has to work, she whispered to herself. It has to. When Peter returned from work, he sat down at the table with Victoria. Sophia served them the drug-laced food, her heart racing. She watched nervously as they ate. "This tastes different," Peter commented, frowning slightly. "Just eat," Victoria snapped. "I'm not in the mood for complaints." They finished their meal, and within minutes, their eyes began to droop. "I feel so tired," Peter murmured, his head nodding. "Me too," Victoria agreed, her voice slurring. They both slumped in their chairs, fast asleep. Sophia wasted no time. She grabbed her pre-packed bag and slipped out the door, her heart pounding with fear and excitement. She fled into the night, not daring to look back.